Hello, this is Colin Stoops, and welcome back to another Human Legacy HTUC video, and in today's video, I'll be talking about Snagoop, a Lumin with unlimited potential in terms of damage and clean capabilities that the metagame has found issues in dealing with. From learning the counters and checks and teammates in order to know how to team build around Snagoop, to learning the roles and sets of Snagoop so you can use it in the battle, today's video is all about how to use and counter Snagoop. The first section will be about Snagoop's role, which is defined by its base stats, abilities, and typing. First off, Snagoop's offensive power is quite great as it has a natural base range attack stat of 121 and a decent energy stat of 89. This allows Snagoop to reach common energy benchmarks such as 250 and use high base power moves efficiently. Not to mention, Snagoop has a good speed tier of 108, which can naturally outpace the likes of Ferroglyph, Gargolem Attack, and Garbantus. However, its defensive base stats of 50 HP, 72 melee defense, and 89 range defense makes Snagoop hard to swap into the battle and take damage. Thankfully, Snagoop's defensive typing somewhat remedies this. Snagoop's useful resistances to plant, bug, brawler, toxic, and immunity to earth allows Snagoop to offensively check Lumines such as Baneki, Tatab, Gargolem Defense, and Dokomori. However, its weaknesses to ice leaves it open to Icicle Trap damage, while its electric and mind weaknesses makes revenge killing Snagoop easier with the likes of Sulong and Hunder. While Snagoop's frail nature will make it easier to kill, Snagoop has great abilities like Marksman to abuse damage to its fullest potential after a buck up, or supply utility through niche barter self-status inflicting items with the normal ability Immunized. However, Immunized is quite niche and Marksman sets at this moment are the better pick to use. Overall, the role that Snagoop will be playing on teams will be a high-risk, high-reward setup sweeper that will need to choose when to set up and when to clean in order to get as much value as possible. Of course, Snagoop's frail nature will make it hard to swap in, struggling to set up, and force specific items that I will talk about in the stats section. However, it still has an earth immunity and nice brawler resistances, so it isn't impossible. Despite all this, Snagoop's high ceiling of damage with Marksman is nothing to scoff at, as its speed tier will give it potential to clean through slower paced teams. As alluded to, Snagoop's best viable set is a Marksman focus set. Of course, our ability of choice will be Marksman to take advantage of crits, while our personality can vary between Smart Nimble Very Frail to Very Nimble Frail Foolish. Very Nimble is to outspeed Nimble Zulongs and anything below, while Smart Nimble keeps a good base damage and makes you less reliant on your setup. Honestly, both personalities are very team reliant. If your team lacks a boot user or is relatively slow, Very Nimble Frail Foolish is good for you. If your team has a secondary revenge killer, then Smart Nimble Very Frail is your best bet. Moveset will include Airblade, Muck Blast, Tsunami, and Buck Up. Snagoop pretty much needs all of these coverage moves no matter how useless they may seem. Airblade is to guarantee crits after a Buck Up, Muck Blast to chip specific Lumions before they get momentum off you, like Luminami, Lashent, and Solburst Takuda. There are also specific situations where Airblade is resisted and you need Muck Blast for strong neutral damage, and these can include matchups versus Zulong, Chienta, Wintrix, and more. Tsunami is here for specific electric and earth types to hit neutrally or super effectively, such as Eliguana, Elephage, Himber, and Tyrax. This also helps in very specific matchups against fire types that are neutral to air, such as Nobadius and Pyrolin. 99% of Snagoop sets should be running Clutch Plushing. This guarantees a buck up late game, and when played your cards right through the opponent's Snagoop answer is gone, Snagoop can clean teams like cutting through butter, even if the opponent's team is a slightly bit chipped. Other than this, essences of each respective move is fine to use. The set is quite simple. 80 HP are your leftovers, 12 energy to reach 250 energy, allowing you to use 5 of your stabs, 200 range attack and speed to max out your stats, Of course, running Smart Nimble for consistent damage and speed is the better option. However, wanting to outspeed the dumpster fire in this metagame is perfectly understandable. The best way of dealing with Snagoop is offensively. However, that doesn't mean that there are defensive answers to Snagoop. Offensive answers to Snagoop can include Zulong, Jetwing, Mamask, and Chienta. These Lumions are particularly great because they can hit Snagoop super effectively or very hard neutrally. They also have different forms of damage in terms of pivot from Zulong and Mamask, so they can break the clutch plushie and go into something else that would rather take the hit. Other than this, you can use defensive answers such as Jetwing, Oxydrake, and Terraform. Terraform doesn't really care about the crits because it is a very low chance for Terraform to actually get to it KO'd by Snagoop, specifically 0.2%. However, Jetwing and Oxydrake are Lumions that can get to it KO'd, however they are reliant on crits. What's usually gonna happen is that Oxydrake can Vice Jaws the Snagoop, so Snagoop can't try and crit twice with a Muck Blast, and Jetwing here can outspeed it when Soul Bursted. It's mainly just to take the hit before Soul Bursting. Other than this, you can use electric types such as Elephage, Plasmoth, and Iliguana. While it does have Tsunami to hit these Lumions super effectively, these Lumions can come in on pretty much any other coverage and take advantage of Snagoop. Another thing I did forget to mention is Diborg. However, Diborg is not really this great in today's meta, so I wouldn't really talk about this too much. So one of the Lumions that I really pair up with Snagoop is offensive earth types such as Tyrex. Tyrex can hit the metal and electric type swap-ins for Snagoop pretty easily. And while yes, Snagoop has Tsunami for said electric types, these electric types are still preventing Snagoop from cleaning, and of course Tyrex can help with that. Tyrex can answer Elephage, Plasmoth, Iliguana, Jetwing, and Oxydrake. 5 of Snagoop's offensive and defensive checks that they don't really want to go up against, which is good for any sort of Snagoop focused team. What's also good is that Snagoop can help check the niche bug type swap-ins to Tyrex, such as Garbantis and Harvesect. Snagoop can also threaten out Lumions such as Ursnack and Luminami, which Tyrex ultimately doesn't really want to try and go up against. So, using this core, I will be demonstrating a team that I think is pretty good for that same reason. So one of the teams that I will be mentioning here is a Snagrex balance core that will take advantage of the offensive duo. This is going to be a Snagrex type of balance core that is mainly going to be geared around beating semi-stall, stall, and even balance. You're going to be seeing a good trend here of Snagoop and Tyrex being very great against semi-stall and stall. Lumions such as Ursnack that can answer Tyrex and robust Cleones, you're never really going to be seeing them on stall, so Tyrex has pretty much free reign over most stall teams. What's also great about this specifically is that Snagoop here also does really well against stall. There's not really a lot of Lumions that can actually revenge kill this in the late game, which means that Snagoop, after a buck up and then after Tyrex has chipped a few things, can just clean through teams. And then we can also play around offensively with Barbadger. Barbadger is another good Lumion that just does very well against stall. I mean, heavy armor Luminamis, and I guess playing around with Billaforge and Ursnack is probably going to be your best bet for Barbadger. So just for this reason, these 3 Lumions are super good against that specifically. And then the rest of the Lumions here are mainly going to be supporting Snagrex offensively. The first example is Lashent with Icicle Traps. Now there aren't too much swap-ins to specifically Snagoop and Tyrex that are weak to Icicle Traps, but we have other Lumions such as Iliguana and Cleone, which can bait in specific plant types. For Iliguana's case, it's Lashent and Flychomp, and Cleone also applies to Lashent, which Lashent with Icicle Traps helps that specifically. You're also going to notice the fact that without Barbadger and Tyrex, the team kind of just gets cleaned by Violana, so you kind of have to run Traps Lashent here. And then other than this, Villeforge, Cleone, Lilguana, they're mainly here to stop good revenge killers and sweepers. Villeforge mainly here to stop the Wrestling Tatabs and the Chientas. Cleone also stopping Chienta, but also mainly stopping stuff like Magma Dire and Land Torch. Also, we are heavy armor, which means we can do pretty well against Barbadger, Tyrex, and Tsunami will help us with the Magma Dire. And Iliguana here, it's more of running it here out of necessity so you can have a better check against Land Torch and Zulong. You could run Elephage over Iliguana here, but I just want more consistency against Elephage, or not Elephage, but Land Torch. But other than this, that's pretty much the team I'm running. You can see some clear weaknesses here. For example, Vesperatu kind of just slaps this team to hell. And you have some other Lumines like Barbadger, which you will have to play around quite well enough. So that's pretty much it from this section. So the next core is mainly going to be fit on more bulky offensive and offensive teams, which is going to be a Snagoop core with Ikuzune and Flychomp as offensive Lumions. Ikuzune here is mainly going to be our go-to Lumion for revenge killing Lumions like Zulong, Jetwing, Mamask, Chienta. Basically anything that Snagoop will not want to be facing in order to clean through teams easily. So Ikuzune is going to be useful for that, and it also acts as a pretty good offensive answer for Stratosaur. While Ikuzune won't be wanting to be taking a hit after Stratosaur has Soul Bursted, it's still a good Lumion nonetheless to try and force it to Soul Burst early or force it to actually hit instead of Magnify and Clean. Ikuzune here also serves to outspeed some boots users such as Barbadger. However, the higher speed tiers you go, such as Wendolin, Land Torch, and Tatab, is something you don't really want to face. Other than that, Flychomp will help you answer stuff like Elephage, Plasmoth, Eliguana, and Terraform Gasstroke. All of these Lumines being pretty common answers, at least on more bulkier teams, to try and shut down Snagoop. Flychomp also has Poison, which can help break the likes of Oxydrake and Elephage easier once Snagoop can get up a bug up. Another thing that Flychomp also does pretty well in this core is that it can help bait in stuff like Stratosaur for Ikuzune to take advantage of. Ultimately, this is a pretty solid trio, and I have a good team that can go along with it. So this team is going to be surrounded by pretty much offense. I've had a lot of fun using this team, particularly because there's quite a lot of offensive threats and a lot of pivoting, which can help more beginner players to offense and of course just regular competitive players. This is going to be surrounded by Mamask, Chienta, Yursnak, and Elephage. Now there's a very clear theme with this team, and that's the fact that there's a bunch of pivot and there's a bunch of Lumines here that are going to have immunities to help swapping in better. There is quite a lack of bulk on this team, but like I said, we have great immunities here. Snagoop to Earth, Flychomp to Light, Ikuzune to Fire or Electric depending which ability you have available, Chienta to Spirit, Yursnak for Brawler, and Elephage just pretty well against a lot of the stuff here. We're going to be utilizing Facade Mamask to bluff a lot of our swap-ins and our offensive pressure. Because everything here has specific matchup fishing, whether that be Ikuzune with Eliguana, Elephage, and all of that, Flychomp baiting in specific fires and toxic types, Snagoop baiting in electric types, Chienta baiting in bulky waters. Mamask has a lot of facade potential here, and just the threat of this alone is very scary for the opponent. Mamask also supports the team through hazard setting with barbs or poison barbs, depending which one you want to run. Fade away, also very good. You have slap down, and you can choose to run your fourth move option with Mud Spatter, Baneful Bash or Muck Blast, or something else. Elephage here is sadly going to be our removal with Teardown. While we can have something else like an Eliguana here for Mudslide, I particularly think that Elephage is fine. You're most likely not going to be able to get hazards up all the time, so Elephage here is just pretty nice to keep up pressure. And of course, this team is going to be a heavy emphasis on doubling and predicting and using full utility on Facade the Mask. If you do not have a Facade the Mask, Mask Swap is honestly fine. It has some nice stab potential, even though stab in this game is not too great. But in my opinion, that this team is quite enough if you're going to want to try and use a team that's somewhat different.